What's up, geeks, and welcome back to the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Justin, and no, you're not crazy. That was our theme song played backwards because today we're talking about all things inverted. That's right. Today we bring you our Tenet review, Christopher Nolan's latest film to finally hit theaters. But first, if you're joining us for the first time, this is a weekly podcast covering the world of film, television, gaming, toys, collectibles, and all things geek-centric. Joining me, as always, I have my geeky co-hosts, the interstellar Nate Shelton and the Dunkirk kid, Kevin Hudson. What's up, boys?
Heyo. Hola, geeks.
How you guys doing?
Oh, God. Doing good.
Awesome. Well, you know what? We recently saw each other, so we don't need to necessarily do the usual catch-up. As we were talking at the beginning of the show, we did get a chance to go out and see Tenet in theaters and IMAX, and we've actually broken our review up into 2 episodes. So this is going to be a very high-level overview of our reaction to the movie. In the following episode, we'll be getting into more spoiler details, so be sure to check that out if you have seen the movie. But for now, let's start by talking about the movie theater experience. Kev, let's actually start with you, because I know you're a bit of a connoisseur when you go to the movie theaters. You like the experience, you enjoy that experience, and obviously this being much different, how was it?
Yeah, I think overall it was really, really well done. I'll just touch on what you had mentioned there earlier, that it's been so long. I almost regret not going to a few more movies in January and early February. So it was great to be back. The first thing I noticed was how almost eerily quiet and empty the concourse was. I mean, there couldn't have been more than 15 people walking around, you know?
Well, I mean, to Kevin's point, it was eerily creepy walking in, and how quiet it was. I think it was interesting when you see that one person that's not wearing the mask. You know what I mean? Like, he stands out like a sore thumb. Yeah. And there was just this one jabroni dude, macho misto man guy, that was like no mask on. He had it hanging off the side, and I kept like, just put it on, But I mean, I don't know, man. In the theater, we were talking about the trailers. Before the trailers, there were obviously the advertisements. Every ad was about COVID.
Yes.
Right, yeah. Every single ad was about the keg, we're going to make sure that your restaurant experience is no different than it was before, and like all this stuff. And I'm just like, but yeah, so I thought that was kind of strange. The trailers were nice to see, but I gotta say, even some of the ones that I was looking forward to seeing in IMAX, like the trailer for the new Top Gun movie, was a little bit marred by the disappointing experience of people trying to sit on my lap as they had to walk across through the aisle.
Yeah, they did it to us too. And it's like, you got to walk around these days, guys. Just walk around.
Read the room.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest annoyance. We should have done better to say, no, please go around. I'm not, I know.
Yeah, because they were right up in our space.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just one of those things where, again, it's like, read the room. We were the only, I think it was us and maybe 3 other people that I counted that were actually following the mask rule and actually wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Other people were just not wearing a mask at all, which was super disappointing. I mean, just from a standpoint of I don't know, even if they don't care about themselves, right? Like, Justin, you'd mentioned in a conversation we had, that it's about respect.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. It's about respecting other people, and it's not so much, you don't have to worry about yourself. So I thought that was super disappointing. One thing I will say, though, about the experience of wearing a mask for this movie specifically, there were some meta moments in experiencing the whole mask thing that maybe we'll dive into. But
just to touch on people not wearing a mask, they gave you about 4 or 5 guidelines that you're supposed to follow while watching a movie in these times. And so not only were people not wearing their masks, but the other one that stood out was after the movie, they asked you to take your garbage with you. And the five people in my row to my left all left their trash. And they're the ones who were crossing over in front of us, and they left their garbage. And it's just like,
I would expect this kind of behavior at a Fast and the Furious movie, but at a Christopher Nolan film, come on.
Aren't these tickets vetted for these people? Like, should no, just joking. No, but you guys are right. Like, I think the reason why I wanted to kind of bring it up as part of the podcast is because, there might be apprehensive people that might not want to go see this movie because of these COVID times and go see it in theaters. But I will say I felt completely safe and comfortable. I think it was really handy that, prior to the movie, they ran a little promo about, as Kevin was outlining, like how to kind of be at the movie theaters, the fact that they give you free masks. I enjoy that Cineplex went through that extra effort to kind of provide with a little bit of like marketing material to just kind of say, this is what we would like to see from that movie experience. But to Kevin's point, exactly, you're always going to have people that are just not going to follow those rules and leave their trash lying around.
Well, I just think short of people being dumb, I think Cineplex is doing everything they can. Yes. Again, like short of sort of having like a security guard walk up to people every 5 seconds and be like, you're not eating popcorn, so put your mask back on. Like, without that, obviously, I think Cineplex is actually doing a really, really good job at getting us back into the theater, keeping things clean. It smelt clean, which was
it smelled very sterilized.
Right? I had a good enough time to the point where I'm like, you know what? I might even go see New Mutants.
Yeah, I would agree. I totally agree. Cineplex is actually doing it right. It's the people that you have to be more mindful of. And I think the one thing I regret is not actually being a little, not forceful, but just like saying like, would you mind going around? Like, I know that might be a huge inconvenience to you, but just for the purpose of this whole social distancing, doing that. And I think that's a little bit of what needs to happen is people just need to, say these things and actually voice it and not necessarily make it
in a very courteous way.
Exactly.
Just a respectful way.
Be strategic. Try to focus on finding times that the movie is playing that you don't think will be that popular. And then the other thing I will say is buy your tickets individually, even if you go as a group. I mean, unless you're the kind of person that really needs to talk to the person next to you, which I know Justin loves it when I talk right next to him while he's watching a movie. He's shaking his head right now. And by buying that seat, that single seat, they block out the seat next to you. So it's the best way to really ensure you're getting the most room away from people.
And what you're saying is basically you can still go to the movies with people that are not necessarily in your bubble.
It's crazy to go to a movie that was sold out and there were still only about 25 people in the theater, right? Like I'm not sure how long that's going to last. I don't know. I'm not going to rush back to the theater anytime soon. I don't think. This was a very special occasion.
Sure.
The only reason I went is because it's a movie everybody's been looking forward to for years, and it's an IMAX experience. It was a great way to get back into it, but every single movie that comes out, I'm not going to be rushing to see it in theaters. As good a job as they're doing, it's just it's not something I need to do right now. Right. That's just me personally. For anybody sort of a little hesitant, it's obviously within your own level of comfort, but I would say they've done a great job.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that well said. And I agree. It might not be something that you want to necessarily go back out and do. But, for us, this was pretty special. We're big Nolan fans. And so it was an amazing experience. But speaking of this film, let's start talking about it. I'm actually really interested to see, after sitting on it, Kev, how you feel about the movie.
Overall thoughts, I honestly can't think of another filmmaker working today who's just got such a signature on their work. If you're a Nolan fan, this movie is 110% Christopher Nolan, start to finish. It is just the Nolaniest Nolan to have ever been 100%. Nolan. And I think that's what we wanted. So while certain aspects still have me either scratching my head or going, oh, is that really the best way to do that? I think overall it was a really phenomenal, innovative, daring movie that just had the Nolan stamp all over it. I really enjoyed myself.
Nate, your thoughts?
I mean, it was great. it was confusing. Just like you said, Kev, it's his most Nolan film. To the point where, like, I really have no idea what he could do next. I mean, we were kind of joking around about it, but, like, I'm thinking, like, okay, maybe the next movie has to involve time not moving at all. Like, that's the only option here that he hasn't done yet. So, you know, I will say, like, this movie is definitely worth watching on a big screen, at least the biggest one that you can comfortably get to. I haven't seen action in a movie like this since, I would say, and I know this is going to get a lot of comparisons, but since something like Inception, right? Or even like going further back into like The Matrix. Like you haven't seen fight choreography or you know, even like some of the like car chases and stuff like that. And I'm trying not to get too spoilery, but like, you haven't seen stuff like that before. I know I haven't. And so, you know, keep that in mind. I will say also, if you thought Inception was complex and confusing, and then you're like, okay, well, I kind of get it. And then you went and saw Interstellar, and you're like, okay, I'm really left confused. You're not ready to watch Tenet. Yeah. It's on a whole different planet of complexity.
Oh, yeah, this script makes the script of Memento look like Dude, Where's My Car in terms of simplicity. Like, it is just outrageously bonkers.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you guys have said. Like, first, yes, this is a very traditional Nolan film in that, you know, it's kind of a return to form and in that sort of world that he likes to play with bending time, like literally bending time in his narrative. But also keeping it obviously very, very complex with the notion of time and inversion and all of this concept, which obviously in the trailers, it kind of gives you a brief sort of idea that things are moving backwards, but it's very, very confusing. And I think that in some ways it kind of felt a little wonky at times, like hard to follow. You know, it wasn't like Inception, where Inception felt like they literally held your hand through a lot of the understanding of some of the ideas in that, versus this, which, you know, they're almost speaking to you right off the bat as if you're just kind of, you know, you're in this world. But I feel like the one thing that a lot of people are going to say is it's a Nolan film because it's a head scratcher or it's confusing. But I also think that, like, to actually get to the core of it, you have to watch it so many times, I feel like, to like really understand what he's trying to go for.
Yeah, I think honestly, after a second and third viewing, this will start to kind of climb higher on my ranks of Nolan films. It still doesn't, you know, crack my top 3. But maybe after watching it a few more times, it'll invert its way back into my.
Yeah. I think by the end of it, I had enough figured out that I sort of understood what happened. You know, I don't know the ins and outs, and I don't know how everything happened, but I know what happened.
Right.
And, you know, to your point, Josh, I do think there was. I mean, basically every line of dialogue in it was expositional.
Yeah.
In that it was explaining what's happening.
Oh, of course.
But I think there's such a level of complexity with the science sort of being looked at and the jargon being used that's kind of what made it most confusing.
Right. And that's,
is that even though they're explaining what's happening, they're doing it in such a way that you don't understand what they're saying. And then they're all wearing masks, which makes it that much more difficult to sort of...
Yeah, or speaking in a different language, right?
Yes.
No, I will say one other thing is about this that I don't think is a spoiler, is that there was just a couple, actually quite a few production things that kind of irked me, and we've talked about it, was the audio elements.
Can I quickly chime in on that?
Yeah, no, so I think the audio mixing was a big issue, and this has been an ongoing issue with Nolan's films since like The Dark Knight Rises, where it's like the dialogue almost takes a back seat to the ambient,
to the noises and the music and stuff.
Yeah, and it's like he's really kind of, and like you miss things, and because it's a Nolan film and it's such a head scratcher and you're just trying to figure things out, it's like you take every bit of information as something that needs to be valuable. So did you miss something important? You know, Nate?
Right, and that's part of the stress of watching this movie, is that, like, yeah, there's scenes where you're like stressed out about, you know, is the character going to be okay or what's going on, but you also, you know, with the amount of exposition needed to fully enjoy this movie, it was super frustrating because, like, I felt like a lot of the impact, like both from the plot and some of like the character interaction moments were lost to the noise.
Right.
And for me, like I felt like there were moments that were shown on screen, and you almost hear like a musical sort of elevation or trill, like as if it's supposed to be like a or whoa or wow or laughable, and it just didn't hit me. And I feel like a lot of those moments didn't hit me because I didn't hear the part that set it up, right? Like I wanted subtitles. at the beginning of the movie, I'm like, just turn subtitles on.
He is someone who likes to experiment with sound, the elements of music and sound effects and those layers. It's almost like, like Dunkirk was definitely an exploration in that, in terms of, relying on the ambient sounds of the space and the music and everything to really create this tension rather than just intense dialogue or just the thrilling action.
I can't imagine that that's what he wants for audiences watching this movie. There's no way he wants that.
A lot of people will either say it's an ongoing thing with Nolan movies because it comes up so many times. Like a lot of people said it about Dunkirk, a lot of people said it about Interstellar, but I think it's repetitive to him. Like I think it might be something that he's overlooking maybe in the process. I don't know. I don't know.
Whoever we have to blame has to apologize to Hoyt van Hoytema, who did a phenomenal job with the cinematography in this movie. It's a gorgeous movie. You want to watch it on the biggest screen possible, which is IMAX, but honestly, because of the audio experience that we had in that IMAX theater, and I don't know if it was just our IMAX theater, I'm going to suggest that if you're going to go see this movie, go see it in AVX.
I would recommend going to see it in IMAX, even though the audio was a little rough. I think it was.
See it in both.
Captivated. It's again him taking this medium of IMAX film and just kind of putting it like even in a space, like as it just slowly pans in like maybe like a concrete building, if you will, and it's an IMAX thing. It just feels so much more immersive. And then you have action scenes as well that aren't typically shot with this style of film, that just it feels like you're in it. So I enjoyed the cinematography quite a bit. I think that was one of the outstanding things. He always nails that if he doesn't get the audio.
Really quickly, just because this is something that definitely is spoiler free, and probably if we're going to be talking about audio, this is the most accessible part of the film, which is that amazing score, that awesome soundtrack. Ludwig Göransson did a fantastic job. I think one of the cool things is he created a very heart-pumping, soundtrack that elevated some of the moments, some of the very tense moments, and it all came with the same level of charm and whimsy that this movie uses when it comes to time. And one of the coolest things, like, I was listening to some of it after we watched the movie, and hearing like the strings going in reverse or the horns going in reverse, it was just so... It was so fresh, and honestly, it holds its own for Nolan film soundtracks.
Right, and it's obviously a different composer.
But it carried those themes. It's almost like the evolution of that Nolan soundtrack, right? It's the same familiar style, but just evolved in the next...
It sounded like his rendition of Hans Zimmer-inspired score. Like, I'm sure he's a young kid, right? Like, he's young, and he's, killing it in this composing business, having such great opportunities. And I'm sure, getting asked to do a Nolan film and filling into the shoes for Zimmer, who was busy, I think, working on Dune at the time, which couldn't dedicate time, he, stepped in and I think, probably did his sort of interpretation based on, as you mentioned, Kev, like inspired from other scores of Nolan. So
he still gave it his own with like the rolling drums and things like that. Like there were parts of the score that sounded very much like he was taking from what Zimmer did.
Yeah.
And then other parts that were very much like I was picking up some Mandalorian vibes at certain points with the drums and stuff like that, and just the way the beat was used to carry the songs forward. I really honestly, like, it's probably up there next to Interstellar as far as some of my favorite scores from the Nolan verse.
Interesting. Awesome. So, okay, that was a bit of a all over the map, spoiler free review. Obviously, we liked aspects of it, which we will get into more details. But guys, what is your rating? If you were to give this movie a rating so that, our lovely listeners, if they think, you know what, maybe I'll go check this out.
Now, I'm not sure if it's just recency bias, which is interesting because usually I don't like a movie right after I see it, and it takes me some time or a repeat viewing to really appreciate it. But in this case, it's one of those movies where I just right off the bat like that. And again, I don't know if it's because we haven't seen a movie in so long that it was just the experience that I'm fawning over. But I honestly might put this right now into my top 3 Nolan films. And while there were a few issues I had, which we'll get into, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
And you said my jokes were bad.
That was great, and you know it.
So I initially came out of the theater feeling along the lines of honestly a 7 initially, just because again, like I was just, there was so much time spent watching that movie where I was just like, okay, what's going on though? Like I was uncomfortable for the wrong reasons. I was uncomfortable from a standpoint of not understanding the narrative so much that I was just like, I found certain moments hard to enjoy. Sitting with it and also, honestly, watching some explainer videos helped so much to, I think, raise the quality of the film, honestly. And so I would probably go so far as to say it's an 8 out of Tenet.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go about 7 on this one. Only because I think there's a lot of things I like about it. It does feel very Nolan. I just think that there's certain things that just felt a little sloppy at times. The audio issues and the dialogue were a big annoyance. And I'm watching it again. Maybe I would give it a 7 out of 10. Tenet,
which isn't to say don't go see this movie in theaters.
No,
like if you're listening to this, go see the movie.
Yeah, 100%. I think everyone should go see it in theaters because of the IMAX more so than the audio, right? Like,
sure.
Just be prepared that there might be some moments where things just might not be clear, and then you'll know what we're talking about. Were they relevant? Were they meant to be relevant? We'll never know. So, but yeah, I think a 7 out of 10. I think it was a strong movie out of the gate. Might not be his strongest, though. All right, so that is it for our spoiler-free review of Tenet. If you want to hear more and hear us gab on and get into more details about this movie, be sure to check out our next episode where we get fully in-depth with this inverted time theory. But that's it for us. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars is the minimum rating you can give there. So please rate and review and let us know what you think. But as always, we are Geekcentric, and you can be too, which means you can check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/Geekcentric. Follow us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT, and check us out on Instagram at WeAreGeekcentric. Kev, Nate, thanks for joining me for today's spoiler-free review. As we say,
love ya.
Stay home or go out safe.
Peace.